So we'll get started. Hello, everybody. I'm Chandana Ekanayake. I'm the creative director and co-founder of Outerloop Games. We made a game called Thirsty Suitors that came out last year, and I'm going to talk about sort of the approaches to the theme and narrative and gameplay. For that, I've been making games for a long time. I'm very old. I worked on Bethesda games early in my career as an artist, and then got into design work and production. And these days, I do everything except programming, but mostly, game direction and design and visual direction for our games. Done RTS games, RPG games, multiplayer shooters, a bunch of VR games, and we started our studio 7 years ago with a game called Falcon Age. It's a game about raising a falcon and fighting colonizers. That was a VR game, and also ended up becoming non-VR as well. That's me with the socks on the left. Around the time we left Sri Lanka, we immigrated to the U.S. when I was about 8. Lived in various parts of the U.S., and I'm in the West Coast, in Seattle now. We started the studio fully remote. I spent 20 years working in studios and got really tired of it. So we decided to do it remotely, mostly because I also spent a lot of time crunching and got tired of that. So I wanted to see if we can start a studio, be a little more welcoming with, for both game and life. Yeah, so fully remote. We're across 7 cities. It's like 17 hours, so we use a lot of Slack, and Miro is our main way that we design. So it's really helpful for remote teams. And the themes that we focus on are underrepresented culture and themes, and try to make the games accessible. And we've been 4 days a week, 32 hours a week for 3 years now. That's working out. When we think about a new game, we ask ourselves a bunch of questions, like what do we want to make? What do we want the player to feel? Because we typically make narrative, single-player narrative games. And is this a game only we can make? Does it showcase our team's strengths and our values? Does that come through in the design and the narrative? And also, is it in a genre that an audience has an audience, but can we somehow stand out from it? And is it pitchable? What's the high concept? Which led us to Thirsty Suitors. It's a surreal, story-driven game with turn-based RPG battles, skating, and cooking, and it's just all mashed together. And it's not really a dating sim, it's a breakup simulator, which is probably a better description of it. And here is one of our trailers. Yeah, so the game has 3 big systems, but really we focus on the themes first. And it is a celebration of culture. It's about Jala, the young woman in the middle, and her 6 exes that you have to battle. So people say it's like Scott Pilgrim. There's some of that idea. And it's also about Jala's she's a real mess. She's coming back home after a big breakup in her small town in Washington State. She's pissed off all her exes and her parents and her sister. So the game is about reconciliation and redemption. And it's not a coming out story. It's definitely queer themed, but we didn't want to do a queer 101 type game. There's plenty of that out there. A lot of immigrant themes, anti-colonial vibes, the best vibes, generational trauma, generational pressure. We get into that. The story is that you come back home, your sister's getting married, and then by the end of the game, your grandma shows up from India, and you battle her she becomes like a Godzilla-sized boss battle, so as grandmas do. The battles are very surreal, so we call them psychodrama battles. And then the cooking part is, we'll get into some of those mechanics and themes, but it's really about connection, personal connection through cooking. So we're big believers. This is a good quote that sums it up. The more specific we are, the more universal something becomes. Life is in the details. If you generalize, it doesn't resonate. The specificity of it is what resonates. And our idea for all the games we do is that if you're part of the culture, you'll get the references. If you're not, then think of it as like visiting a country from someone that's hosting you. That's a local, and we're essentially inviting you into our house, giving you great food, hopefully showing you a good time, and hope you appreciate the culture a little bit more. So that's our approach to doing very specific cultural things, but also there's some universal truths, love, breakups, all these things, food, that I think also connects beyond cultures. So why did we make it? I don't think I could have pitched this 5 years ago. I don't think nobody would have gone for it. But around 5-6 years, and there's shows like Never Have Ever and movies like Big Sick that focused on South Asian themes were coming out. We thought it'd be a great, unique perspective for us, and it speaks to the values of our team. I'm a huge fan of Yakuza games, but they're really too big for me, so I wanted to see if we can make a baby Yakuza, which is, the playtime for Thirsty is like 7 to 14 hours, which is like, okay, I want people to finish it. Hopefully that's a good bite size, but also with that scale, we can make the narrative moments really impactful. So yeah, for mechanics, we're inspired by some Paper Mario, turn-based combat, and Like a Dragon, and some Persona stuff as well. And really, the turn-based combat allowed us to have these moments of dialogue that worked really well. The dialogue moments were as important as the combat, so we wanted to, so that the sort of the approach to the combat worked out well. And then last year, we have 2 South Asian themed games. So Venba, our friends, also released around the same, a little before us, and it's been great to see. The culture is so big and vast. We can have 2 separate games that can deal with. I think we have 1 overlapping food type, but other than that, it's like different types of games. Okay. These are how some of the battles go. This is Sergio, your boyfriend from when you were 8. He thinks he was a boyfriend. I think you only kissed once, but he's still holding on to that. So as soon as you come into town, he's there to meet you. So there's choices. We keep track of all the choices the player makes. You see there's a little thing called Heartbreaker there over the dialogue box, and those are what we call thirst sonas. They're different sort of archetypes of playstyle that affect from dialogue to combat stats.
I just got off the bus 10 minutes ago.
Oh, really? Weird coincidence. Must be fate, huh?
Or a testament to the enduring power of Sergio's thirst for you. So...
We have a narrator that's the voice of your sister that's in your head, because you also don't get along with her. And that, as the game progresses, you end up meeting with her, and then that changes. But initially, it's your sister in your head.
Just talk to my mom. She'll tell you why I'm perfect.
We took some traditional RPG tropes. So there's a base attack that essentially builds up mana or willpower. In our case, there's a health. There's taunt. So those are, like, if you think of status effects in RPGs, that's for us. So instead of like poison and things like that, it's like thirsty and raging and heartless. And those are things you can try to inflict on your opponent, and they have their weaknesses. So Sergio has 2 weaknesses that the player doesn't know about, and if you match the right taunt, he goes into a mood, and then you can follow up with a skill that matches that mood.
I still think about our first kiss. Can't let you go again. Been waiting a long time. Get a few things off my chest.
Each of the 5 or 6 suitors has their inner world that they go into.
Between us. It's real, Jala, and I'm gonna prove it to you.
What the hell? I can't make a dent. Ah!
And you get to summon your mom as a attack type.
Dr. Chuckle, no!
And there's different types of summons. You can summon your auntie to help you heal and other things too. So.
Brought your mom into this.
You started it.
That's just a good sign. Wow, you meet your parents.
Is that me? Oops. Sorry. So after the battle, the battle ends in reconciliation, essentially. So you get to a place where you are, it's not a romance game per se, but you can have a relationship with all the exes. You get to a place of understanding at the end of a battle, and then you can follow up with favors for them, if you want to. And then in between the battles, you can explore the small town, and the main way of doing that is through skating. And there's also these random gifts, and sometimes it's a gift, sometimes it's a grift.
Hey, are you Jala? Jala Jayaratna. I've been looking for you all over town.
Seems unfair that you know my name and I don't know yours.
Your party thought we'd be a good match.
My grandma certainly has interesting taste in men.
You really didn't know I was coming.
No, I really didn't.
Oh, well. Hope you like surprises, Jala. Because I'm here and I'm ready to settle down with a girl like you.
Yeah. So those are the actual Thirsty Suitors in the namesake. When we originally concepted this game, it was a game about arranged marriage. So we wanted to kind of explore that as a theme. But the more we thought about it, none of us on the team we have friends and family that have done it, but none of us have direct experience. So we went away from it because we didn't feel like we could talk about it in a way that was authentic to the team. So we kept the name Thirsty Suitors, and there's still these suitors that your grandma sends from India that you do random battles with. They're still in the game, but we made it more about Jala and her relationships, so it's more personal and less about arranged marriage. So we have the turn-based combat, we have the skating through town, and we have those random battles, and then you're trying to repair your relationship with your parents, and that's through cooking.
So, Mom, I had an idea. Could you teach me how to cook something? Well, since you're so eager, I guess I can't say no.
Is her dad secretly an evil genius of emotional manipulation? Behind that benevolent facade, he's really got you and Mom worked out.
How about today we start with butt on tops? Go wash your hands before we begin. I just washed them, huh? It's water, not hydrochloric acid. Your hands won't burn off if you wash them again. But are you here to learn to make parachas? Or argue with your mother? Yes, Mom.
Jala Jayarata takes the high road. It's probably also a cold day in hell, considering the world a pig just got its wings.
And don't forget to scrub your nails.
Every dish starts with washing your hands.
Very good.
like the battles, we wanted to make it really heightened and dramatic.
Whisk the flour and salt together.
Oh, I love whisking. Feels very powerful.
Please try not to cover the entire kitchen in flour this time.
I was 5 years old, Mom. Isn't it time to let that instinct go? Good luck. Indian mothers hoard embarrassing childhood stories like dragons or treasure.
Just whisk, Jana. Carefully.
That sari really suits you, Ma.
So you could try to compliment your mom, but it's a risk. It's a chance.
Beautiful color.
Sometimes it's positive. Most times it's not. But
The lady at the shop told me I'm in autumn.
yeah. So the the goal of each of these dishes is to win your mom's approval, which is this bar on the right. And each step, if you do the mini games correctly, you get points. And for every sort of mini game you do, you also pick up these heat up top there on the top left, and those you can use for these special sort of compliments and other moves like super moves that will give you more points.
Whatever that means. Your dad would say you did well, but I'm not your dad. No, I have time.
I'll just skip through. Come on. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, you finish your dish, you present it to your mom, and then she'll taste it. Depending on how well your approval is, she'll have like a flashback that is like a memory of the first time she tasted it. But what she tells you is it was okay. She'll never tell you it was really good. No. And then you cook with your mom and dad, and your dad is way more chill. So for the design of the cooking, we tried a bunch of different approaches. Initially, we had the full recipes. These are all real dishes. We had full recipes of each of the dishes. And there was a step where the mom character was doing the step first, and then the player was doing it. We play tested it. It just wasn't as snappy. And then as we developed the story more, we decided to think about sort of what's the emotional stake for the scene and between Jala and her mom and dad. So we focused on those moments to make this sort of economical, because we have one animator on the team, right, who's doing every single character animation. He's really good, but also a lot of content. So we're like, how can we take these dishes and then break them down into a series of actions? So we made these 9 actions, which is the light blue on the right side, and went through each of the recipes and mixed and matched the sort of the key moments from those dishes. Also lets us balance how many steps there are, so it's not too long for the player too. And so turn-based combat, exploration, skating, and then cooking. Skating initially was just a loading screen. But as we're playtesting, people really liked the vibe, so we're like, oh, let's build it out, see how it would work. Our approach to all the systems and mechanics is we try to get it in as ugly as possible, and we'll play test with external people, see how it feels, and then keep iterating. And we do a lot of play testing. Usually, people. There's a term for like Kleenex testing or tissue testing, where you can bring somebody in once and then they're done. You only get that one chance to get the first impression. So we do a lot of, early in the projects, we bring a lot of play testers in. And have them play through. Since we're all remote, we have a Discord, and we record the whole thing and put it on YouTube for the rest of the team internally. So there's the town is pretty small. There's like 3 locations you can go to, and each location has multiple things you can do. And in the case of the Jala's house in the top there, We have downtown that has multiple buildings and the skate park. And then the whole game kind of takes place in chapters between those three places. So in a given day, you wake up at home, you can cook with your mom or dad, talk to your parents to see what's going on. You might get a call from one of your exes or a text, or from the bear that runs the skate park sometimes. So you can go to the skate park to fight skate punks or do challenges. You can go downtown to fight suitors, the Thirsty Suitors. General store for buying items with all your currency. Go to your auntie's shop that you can upgrade your boards, and then go to the bar for dancing. And then these locations are reused for sort of the big X's battles. And typically you battle next in that day, and then you go home and chat with your dad, and then the chapter ends. So for us to kind of keep all this together in a way that's trackable, we did this thing called a beat map. If you've seen color scripts or color maps from like Pixar movies, it's the same idea. Instead of big moments, we do it for gameplay. So each of the bars, the colors, there's a different type of thing. Like the red is the X's battles, blue is cooking, yellow is conversations, and pink is like minor battles. So the idea was, the game is 10 chapters. For each chapter, we wanted to really get the player a sense of the major story, or set up the day, pay off at the end, usually with an X battle, and then, but also continue the main story. So it has like this sort of stepping feel. So it's almost like episodic TV is our approach to designing this. And this is done in Miro. You can do this in anything. It's just a bunch of boxes and text, but it was the easiest way for me to kind of think about how, what is the game? How long do we want it to be? How many battles? What are all the things? And in a given chapter, can the player, do different things? While the story is linear, each chapter player can choose what they want to do next, and it only progresses when you kind of hit a big narrative beat. And then once we had that, I should say, we initially guessed on these numbers, and also the size of the box also is number of minutes estimations. So that first chunk end up becoming our Steam demo and PlayStation demo and Xbox demo. And then once we sort of built it out, we had some data, and then we kind of extrapolated for the rest of the game for that. And then once we had sort of the structure, we built it out, and then we added unlockables. So there's different taunts and skills. There's these charms that Jala gets that can modify her attacks or defense. And then item unlocks from the store. We kind of, each day there's a special in the store that we unlock. And those items are good for against certain enemy types and abilities. So we just kind of layered on all the unlockables for the game. And the unlocks happen through XP, through battles, through certain key moments. So we did this in Miro, and then built a custom tool in Unity to essentially mimic it. So each of the days or chapters, we have a series of scenes and sub-scenes. So it's easy for, as we're playtesting, to jump into a specific part on that beat map and to test it out. Again, we're a small team, so tools is the way we can do more with a small team, just make things more efficient. So that way you don't have to think about which levels to load. It's in Unity, by the way, So we spent a lot of time building out custom tools for narrative, for level, beat flow, localization stuff as well. Okay. Okay, sorry. So at the end of a chapter, you go back home, it's nighttime, your mom's asleep, dad's always watching TV, and mom's always left some food in the kitchen for you. And that's usually tied to what dish is available that day.
I can see you're not in the mood for talking. Maybe a nice documentary about the Cold War.
Dad. Fine. But next time, I pick.
Some of the chapters will keep track of your choices, and Dad will mention some stuff too, but this is a light one. Okay. And then during battle, when you die, you can, there's a number of continues built in, but you can have a dad charm that'll respawn you, but it's always dad that gives you a word of wisdom.
What a sweetie. That was the way over this.
Okay. Yeah, so built a game with a bunch of content, and then we wanted to voice most of it. Ended up being 9,000 lines of voice dialogue, and then several of the thousand. All the main characters. There's 21 main named characters. They all talk, and a lot of NPCs don't. This was the hardest part, actually, of this development. Well, after we figured out what the game was, but trying to cast authentically as possible for all the characters. That took a while. Folks are from various parts of India and Sri Lanka. So if your grandma Pati, she's South Indian, and we wanted a specific accent for that. So we were looking for a South Indian actress. That took a while, but we found a lot of great people. The dad character also plays the tiger, which is great. And some folks played, doubled up on some of the other characters. But it was a great cast. Took us 8 weeks, full days, 8 weeks straight of recording to do it. So if you're going to do VO, I recommend not writing a lot if you can. For the next game, we're writing less. We're also being more picky about where is dialogue and where is not. And Yakuza games do this all the time, right? There's like big cutscene moments that are fully voiced and fully animated, and then NPC moments that are completely just not. So I was like, oh, well, they can get away with it, so can we. And we're way smaller than they are. The sessions were fun. It was all fully remote again. So we had a casting director in LA, and then we had the actors were in LA sometimes, Vancouver, Toronto, New York, and we'd all zoom in and record it. Here's a sample.
There was an emotional charge between us. We just got carried away.
Yeah, that's emotion. It's called grief. But you skipped straight past empathy and landed on horniness. I can't believe I'm the one who's muted when you're the one who can't control herself.
Settle up.
That's the tiger talking. Yeah.
Monster inside me trying to claw its way out, and you put it there. No matter how unhappy you made her, Alma always came back for more. You taught me that love is a trap. That's why I could never commit to anyone or anything. I was too afraid. You made it so clear I wasn't worth anything unless I was everything. Special, extraordinary. Justify all the sacrifices you made. Live up to an impossible legacy. You made love something I was terrified of. Oh, I hate how much power you have over me, over Mom, over us. I hate that I love you, Paki. I hate that I can't stop. You came here and you turned our family into a battlefield, but this isn't a battlefield. It's my home. Not yours.
So good. Really nice. Really.
I think that was our second take. That was good. So this is like when you're confronting your grandma at the end. There's the whole generational trauma moments between your mom, your sister, and your grandma. It was a really fun process. There's some challenges. Jala, who's on the right, Farah, who plays Jala, she was 8.5 months pregnant by the end of it. We had 9,000 lines. She had 3,000. So we were like, okay. But the studio she was at in LA, her brother-in-law runs it. So he had like her favorite slippers, tea, and a backpack just in case they had to go. We worked out. She finished the lines, and then the week after she gave birth. It was her first kid. I have 2 kids, and she was like, "Oh, I can do pickups from the hospital." I was like, "Lady, you have no idea. Once you have a kid, you're not going to want to do anything else." So we're like, "We'll get it done." And then we have this very custom Google spreadsheet I made. So as we're in the sessions, we're also editing lines and updating the takes, sometimes rewriting. So the actors worked right off of that. And we had filters for, what character they were doing. We had color-coded everything, so it was really easy. Then it was so daunting for us. It was like the most VO we've ever done. So I had like these little formulas to kind of count each one as we finished, and a little percentage going up. That just kept us going. But we have a better idea now how long this stuff takes. So. The hardest cast was Andale. Andale is a South African character that had moved to Charlestown during high school, and she briefly had a fling with them. Our producer is South African, so we asked her if she wanted to, do you want to design a South African character? And she talked to her parents, and we came up with a bunch of very specific part of South Africa and like the costumes and all the details. So designed the character, and then when we went to cast, let's do with everybody else. We do essentially an image, a bio, and some sample lines. We sent it out, and all the readings we got initially all sounded the same. Sunny called it Wakandified. Everybody sounded like they were auditioning for Black Panther. And Black Panther, if you have any African friends, they have very specific thoughts on Black Panther because it's borrowing from a bunch of different cultures, and some of it doesn't really make sense. So I think the thing is, doing this project was really interesting. All the actors that we sent scripts to that worked on the project, they said they'd never seen characters fleshed out as well, because a lot of the times they're in Western shows and movies, and they're usually like a side character, and it's like the brown or black character isn't really well fleshed out. So everyone really loved working on it. So we ended up going to a casting agent in South Africa and got somebody, and we got a couple of readings, and the actor we picked happened to be in a soap opera that Sunny and her mom watched. I was like, okay, let's use him for it. So that worked out, but that took a while to find the right tone and the right accent. And that was important to us. This whole project, it's like we were trying to make it as believable as possible, and those kind of details, I think, for us and for folks that hear it or know the culture, feel it too when they play. And we got good feedback on it. Oh yeah, here's a sample of Andale.
You started confiding in me about your relationship with Tyler, getting my sympathy, making me believe your version. I thought Tyler was a monster, and I felt for you. Forget the false pretenses of our brief relationship. You stole years of friendship with Tyler from me. That's what I can't forget.
Don't deny we had a spark. You were new, exciting. You didn't have any preconceived notions about me.
All right. So when we first started the project, that was the first piece that was done by Vijay, our director on the left. And it was, again, about, we had this idea of suitors that was trying to win Jala's hand. It was a different story. But as we sort of developed it more, the second image up to the right, that really defined the look for the game. So Sergio was, done for this image, and his design never changed. We had every other character went through a bunch of changes, but I think Vijay really nailed Sergio's vibe from the first concept. And then as the story developed, Jala went through 3 different changes, mostly because the story, she was initially like 18, 19, but then as we kind of figured out the themes and the reconciliation and how messy she was, we wanted to make her a little older, so she's like more 26 or so now. And so the models, we kept updating the models to make it feel more appropriate to the story. So yeah, so that was Jala version 2, and then Jala 3 on the right is what we end up shipping with. We also, I don't know if, this is not just South Asian culture, but colorism in general is a big thing in South Asia. So there's like skin whitening creams and things like that, and any sort of advertisements or even movies. Usually, the woman is lighter skinned than the male, and lighter skin is considered more beautiful. So like we wanted to kind of work against that. Jala is a darker skinned character. And same with mom and dad. We also played with that too. Those are subtle things. I don't think some folks noticed it, but that was important to us. We also played with ideas of Mom's very traditional. Grandma's to the right. She's not very traditional. So we wanted to kind of have that contrast. And your auntie, who is a power lifter and runs a body shop. We wanted to do an older auntie that's as a power lifter. So that was fun too. So we got to play with some ideas and character designs throughout the project. Once we kind of knew Jala's color palette, we did a palette for each of the X's, which also helped define their inner worlds. Because they all do a costume change, and then also Jala does too at the end. But yeah, so different body types, colors, non-binary characters, different queer representation was important to us across all the characters. And then so food. We have some South Asian dishes. We have a couple of Palestinian dishes because there's 2 people on the team are Palestinian. We have a South African dish, which is on the top left. So really, everything in the game is inspired by people on the team and personal stories and fantasies. Not all the X's are based on actual X's, but some of the characters are. There's definitely some bits thrown in, the way Megna's our main writer, and she wrote some lines for her the mom in the game, and she played it with her mom, and she was worried her mom would recognize that's really based on her some of the times, but it worked out fine. So, I mean, yeah, the game's not autobiographical in any sense. We always get asked that, and it's interesting. I don't think most white teams get asked that question, but if you do something that's culturally specific, they're like, "Is it about you?" It's like, no, we can fantasize too. We can make up stuff. But definitely, there's some inspiration from some of our experiences. It was received pretty well. We lost a bunch of awards to Baldur's Gate. Happy to do that this year. 23 was rough. A lot of great games. But we were happy the narrative and the approach and the art to the game. People really responded well to. So yeah, I think looking back at it, yeah, it was 3 years for us, start to finish, almost 3.5. And then 2.5 of those years was 4 days a week. So we scaled a lot of it down. But we managed to build a pretty big game. I think if I had to do it again, I'd probably scope it down even more. I was worried it wasn't going to be at least 4 hours, and it became way more. So, and of course, the more stuff you have, the longer it takes to polish and all that. So the next project we're trying to scope, it's a similar size game, but we're trying to scope it down a little bit, and so we can spend more time polishing each thing. Yeah. So, and then what's next? So same team, same tools. We just announced this a couple weeks ago at Summer Games Fest. It's called Project Dosa. It's about these 2 sisters and their spirit mech running around feeding people. A lot of food theme, again, but no skateboarding. You platform around, and then there's turn-based combat, but it's more party-based turn-based combat. It's more Octopath or Sea of Stars kind of approach and Mario RPG approach. Similar themes. I mean, we're dealing with, some reconciliation because you start the game and one of the sisters is dying, and you want to reconnect with your partners that used to run a restaurant together to have one final meal, and that's the setup. So it's a little different than Jala's messy dating life, but a lot of similar found family themes in this case. Food, lots of different types of foods, and a little more expression. The thing I guess we've learned from Thirsty is we did a lot of very specific custom one-off content, and for this we're taking those systems and making it a little more player expressive. So you're combining ingredients in this game for the different types of dosas and different types of foods you make. So yeah, it's a little more systemic, which means we can probably get more gameplay and make it interesting without having to build very specific sets for every single character. So yeah, that's where we are, and that's it. I have a little time, yeah. Yeah, any questions?
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation, and thank you for the game. I really liked it. It was really fun.
Thank you.
I was wondering if you could give us maybe more detail about the media reception of the game. Obviously, you dealt with lots of topics and themes that are, quite uncommon, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Were you pleasantly surprised? Were you not so pleasantly surprised?
The game reviewed really well, and I read every piece of thing in video and review and it's been surprisingly, like, people are connecting with it. That like folks that are not familiar with the culture, there was a LA Times article author that I talked to. He's like, oh, he made me think about my exes and relationships and reaching out to people. So I was really happy with that. We've definitely gotten plenty of dumb YouTube comments of DEI the game, which is ridiculous because, anyway. There's that, but like reviews have been really, really great for us. People connected with the themes that we hope they connected with, so, yeah.
If I can ask another one, I noticed that your next project has a cooking element as well.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Vemba, which is another great South Asian inspired game, which is also, more heavily based on cooking. Why is it a motif that's so important to your team and maybe others?
Yeah, I think culturally it's pretty important. I cook a lot. I should have mentioned they're in the cooking section, but my mom doesn't really. We don't get into like very deep personal stories. I think but when we're cooking, she's more open to things, and that's sort of what inspired the cooking in the game. Like, be able to have indirectly working on something like cooking, and then being able to actually open up more and put our guard down a little bit more, so we can have a conversation. So I think the culturally, it's really like a big thing for, I think, Indian culture and South Asian culture and African culture, and a lot of cultures, I think so. Yeah, cooking is a big part, and it's the way our approach to cooking is like the emotional connection through the mechanics, and there's still stuff I want to explore with the next game, with the ingredients and things like that, that I think is really interesting. So. Same with Vemba. I mean, Vemba is not really a cooking game. It's cooking themed, but it's a very great narrative, awesome story, short experience, and but similar themes with mom cooking. Yeah.
So thank you very much for the talk. It was really really cool. Yeah, sorry, I'm here. I was wondering, did you ever come across like some difficulties in the beginning part of like when you started making the game, trying to pitch something that is so like specific, which I think like it's great as far as narrative design goes, it's what we want, but I feel like it's sometimes kind of hard to have this type of thing come across as something that is valuable, that will reach a large audience and stuff like that. Like, how did you navigate that as a team?
We should do is there pitching talks here? We should do a whole pitching talk, because that's really fun too. So for this, there's someone here who I pitched to on this project too. So we weren't sure what we wanted to do after Falcon Age. So we came up with 3 ideas for games. And I did this round of pre-pitching, which is like play testing, but pitch testing with publishers. It was like 3 very short ideas. So it's like, there's no playable. Mostly, you might have had a trailer or 2, because we make our own trailer, so we're pretty fast at putting fake stuff together really quickly, and key art. So pitching for us has always been like, if you have interesting visuals and a theme, people tend to get it, or the more you can show, people get it. So at the time, and this is 2020, my pitch was like, hey, there is an interest in other media and streaming and TV shows for like South Asian content, and I think there's a space for it in games too. Plus, sort of the theme of the game and our approach to it, which is kind of like this weird non-dating game. We had some mock-ups of sort of the combat stuff. That's what we figured out first. It took us a long time to iterate on the combat, because they were like, well, how do we're really representing 2 people having an argument, but it's like visualized as this combat thing. So there's early on we had this like one bar and like almost a tug of war, as like one person saying something, it would go this way, another person saying something goes this way, and then after that we had it when you sort of finish the battle, you can be friends or enemies, you can choose, and that kind of affected your relationship later. And then we just came back to these 2 health bars really, and the idea of reconciliation made I thought was like the right way to. It fits the sort of the celebration of culture that we were going for. So we ended up just having one ending, and then you can follow up, get deeper conversations. But we initially did this pre-pitching with a bunch of people. This was the 3rd one on the list of the pitches in order. I thought this would be the hardest one, but I think the name and the concept is so unique. It's hard to market, but also it stands out. So people tend to, everyone I showed it to tend to favorite that one. So we ended up spending 6 months building the actual prototype and then repitched to people that we thought would be a good fit. We ended up going with Annapurna, who does other narrative, visual heavy games, and they really liked it from early on. So we ended up going with them. So I think this game is still, I think about sort of how it did okay. Good critical reception, sales are still kind of going, but I think we made it really difficult to market. The name implies a romance kind of dating game, and it's not really that. Coming out in November in 23 was like just a hard time for any small game. But that's like, we ship before we ran out of money kind of approach to indie development, so we had to ship at some point. But we are super happy internally we got to make the game we wanted to make, and it's definitely unique. So, but yeah, it's back to your question. Yes, it's hard to pitch. It's easier if you've already have a team and done it before, and people kind of pitching is like faith-based. It's like, do I trust this person to do the thing they say they can do? Because when we initially pitched to Annapurna, and we started working on it, and like 2 years later, they told me, they're like, when you pitched, it was so ambitious, we didn't think you could do any of it. But then they're like, and once they started playing at the end of it, they're like, oh, you actually delivered on some of the promises, because like, you see a lot of pitches, especially when you don't know what the game is, that seem like nice and ambitious, but then when you start building it, you run into every game has problems that you have to solve, and for me, that's the fun part, but this game is pretty close to what we pitched.
Thank you.
Hi. Hi. Thank you for your talk. I was curious if there was what was the hardest part of the narrative, like either that the team disagreed upon or that you had to iterate the most upon, and what was your process to like sort of figure out that, whichever hardest part of the narrative?
Yeah, so we do narrative games, but we don't write till the end. We build the game first, and then it's so much cheaper and easier to write around gameplay than it is to rebuild around a story that you're locked into. If you do story too early, not saying we don't know what the story is, we have a sort of general, story doc and bullet points. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but we know the general tone. We don't know what the order of the X's are going to be. We don't know what's going to happen at the end exactly, but we waited pretty late to actually writing dialogue. And I like that approach. That worked out well. I've done previous projects where we were like, yeah, we're making a narrative game. We have the story, and you build to the story, and it's like, well, the gameplay pacing doesn't work. So trying to figure that out was the reason we did the beat map, is trying to like mechanically pace it, and then string it together with a phone call here, or a text here, or a character moment here. That worked out a lot better. I think the hardest part was the skating. That is the least like any other system in these kind of games in a genre. So I think that was hard. Some people had a hard time with it. And if we thought about it again, I'd probably make skating a little smaller part of the game. And there was this A-line story that people really liked. There was a B-line that we never quite finished because we cut a battle. And once we cut that, it just didn't feel like a very satisfying ending. But the boss battle and how it came out and how we ended it, I was really, really happy with. It worked out really good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi. On your right. Thank you for your talk. I'm going to try to build up on everything we've heard and at the same time throw it back to the quote at the very beginning, because you are presenting your dedication in a way to authenticity in the cultural representation.
Yeah.
And my question was, how do you balance that with the universality of game design in a way? Like, did you have some culture shock moment in playtesting, some hard choices saying like some people are not going to get it, but we're still going to do that?
No, I mean, I think it's, if you try to, well, I mean, I guess there's a couple approaches to design games. Like, the theme was so specific and unique, we wanted to make sure the gameplay approaches were a little more familiar to folks. So that's why some of the systems we built, like Paper Mario kind of timing elements and quick time events kind of things, were a little easier. So there wasn't too much real shock, because I think if you're doing a really weird, interesting theme and also really weird, interesting gameplay, that's where I think players have a hard time. So a lot of playtesting, we kind of simplified some of the stuff as we went. I don't know if that answered your question, actually. Yeah, no real moment of shock. I think there was certainly, I'll give you an example. One of the reviewers caught on that Sergio is a Portuguese-sounding name. It's because the Portuguese were in India, Sri Lanka for hundreds of years. So, like my stepdad's name is Fernando, which is like, more kind of a Spanish Portuguese name. So we called Sergio because it's like that's the region he was in, and it was like Portuguese inspired from his family, and those kind of things like most people miss, but definitely a South Asian reviewer like, oh, I get why they did this, and that stuff is cool for us. So.
Hello.
Hi.
Thanks a lot for the presentation. You partially answered the question already, but just to elaborate on that a little bit. You mentioned that the fighting moments were like representations of an argument.
Yeah.
As you did a lot of things differently, did you think at some point to get rid of the actual fighting? Because fighting is so present in all games.
In all games, yeah.
And sometimes I wonder whether that's a verb that we are bound to and never can get rid of.
Yeah.
And, it's a big challenge, so I wanted to have you
It is. No, we actually had, multiple approaches to it, and in the game, they don't actually make contact ever. It's all with like some holograms and things. That was our way of doing it, but it's also like sort of the staff we have. We have like different folks that would like different things, and that was the thing that I thought was an interesting way to showcase this. But it's a weird thing because you're dealing with like relationships and also physical combat. So I don't know if we ever found a good. We got to where we are. I think we're okay with it, but it's still, if you think about it too hard, it's like, that's a little weird. Yeah. But I think because our themes are so weird and the game was like this weird mishmash, wanted to have something more that's tangible, interesting or not interesting, easier for folks to understand. We didn't have anything better at the time. I think now I could probably do something more interesting with it, but yeah. I think you can have tension, you can have drama without combat, for sure.
You said the game is about personal stories, memories, and backgrounds from people, from members of your team.
I mean, loosely inspired and then, fictionalized, yeah.
So my question was, how did you decide what was the purpose of the game, what was not, like forced marriage, for example, and what was your process to deal with conflicts, if any, among the team?
So early on, we were really worried because, not all South Asians have the same beliefs, obviously, so no kind of people always do. So we were always like, hey, are we going to just piss off some people? Are we going to piss off everybody? Because how we're approaching it. So we thought of it as from what makes sense for Jala's story and journey. And that's, once we kind of like figure that out, because it's her story, then a lot of decisions were just made sense. Oh, Jala wouldn't do this, or she would, maybe she would do this or not this, and that's the way we sort of approached the narrative and writing. Is this is Jala's story and Jala's perspective. Yes, you are playing her, but the way the options that she says are not something the player would probably say. It's just based on her frame of mind, and that's the way I think once we kind of thought of it from that perspective, it made the writing and narrative easier. And it's not gonna connect with everybody for sure. Like we understand that too. So.
Here. Okay. Hello. Thank you for the talk. I would like to ask for the narrative and all the work about the narrative design that you did in the game. Mm-hmm. Did you ask it for any help, for example, for the sensitivity reading, or to be sure that you are tackling all the cultural aspects in the right way, or you have been confident about the fact that you were Indian or some of the team, and if you have to work on another game which is not about this same culture, do you think that this kind of help is required and important?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, we tend to, like, Thirsty is all, like, everything in there is, like, either representative of someone on the team or, someone close to us, so it wasn't a lot of anything like I said, like the arranged marriage thing, we're like, oh, we can't speak to it directly, so we designed the characters and the stories based on sort of what as a team felt strongly about. And we had some friends and family like look over things and things like that, but like I think, yeah, if you're definitely sort of, if you're doing a story and the team can't speak to it directly, definitely getting some folks that are familiar with the cultural aspects. It's very subtle stuff too. And my only issue with is typically those people are brought in too late, or they have no say in the direction of the game, which happens a lot. But getting somebody on the team, hiring somebody on the team that's familiar with it, or getting them early on before you start building is the way to go. Sometimes I do that for other teams. Magna does that. We have other folks that do that. But like sometimes it's like they bring you in, and then I just have to say no, thank you, because it is very obvious from the makeup of the team and who's making the calls that anything I say will not change anything. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your speech. A lot of things you depicted hit very close to home, and I was wondering, since one of your main goals was to be super authentic about like some aspect of Southeast Asia and South Asia culture.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you had any specific review coming from players from those regions, or even member from your team that for whom the game actually held maybe like one or several aspects, like maybe for reconciliation with their mother or anything?
Yeah, I mean, definitely sort of, we had a lot of sort of queer South Asian folks that were like really connected with the story and sort of the challenges of navigating that, and depending on where they are, right? So it varies a lot, and depending on their family stuff too. So, and yeah, I mean, we had like a Wired article she was a Indian writer who just really connected with the overall themes. There's aspects of it, like even just the cooking, or summoning your mom in battle, or fighting your grandma at the end, like those kind of things that people just kind of think about in their own lives. And yeah, I think our goal was hopefully there was enough, and that's the thing, like when you're making something specific, you're never going to really, 100% of the audience is not going to identify with everything, and which is fine, but I hope there is some aspect that as a player that you found interesting or found surprising or could connect with. So that was the goal. So I think the most successful part of this game is probably just our approach to narrative and how we tie that to the gameplay as much as possible, which is sort of our focus for the next game too. Just a little tighter. This one, looking back at it, now that I've had time away from it, is like we have 3 systems, and we didn't quite get all of them working as well together. So it feels sometimes like 3 different games. But those are things that we had like a big postmortem at the end and looked at all the reviews and made all the notes, and then we're kind of applying that to the next project. So that's exciting part of having something out there and then having the same team and the same tools to do it again in a different way.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So I think it's done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.